My dear brothers and sisters, the 22nd Sunday of Ordinary Time is inviting us to examine and see how humble and simple we are. In the second reading, letter to the Hebrews, very clearly says, "You have come to the heavenly city, to Jerusalem." And so we are here in the temple of God, in the presence of God. God who dwells in the tabernacle, God who dwells in amidst us. We are in the presence of God, and our service and our praise needs to be humble. Therefore, in the first reading says, the greater you are, the more humble you have to become. And why you have to be humble and simple? Because when we are humble, when we are simple, we find favor in the sight of God. God blesses us. And so humility is a virtue which all of us has to practice in our ordinary life, in our day-to-day life. Therefore, Jesus says in the gospel, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. And for this beautiful example we have in the person of Jesus himself. In the gospel acclamation we sang, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." We have to learn from Jesus. And what are we to learn? How much humble Jesus was. Look at the person of Christ. He is the Son of the Father, vested with all power. If his Father wanted, he could give him everything, all that is possible, because God the Father has created the entire universe. And so Jesus is his Son, only begotten Son. All power was with him. And how does Jesus comes to this earth? St. Paul, in a very beautiful manner, says, "He humbled himself, taking the form of a servant." Taking the form of a servant. Therefore, Jesus says, "I have come not to be served, but I have come to serve." Though Jesus had all the power, he comes as a servant. He comes as a servant to serve his Father and serve all of us. He emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, humbled himself even to accept death on a cross in obedience to the Father's will, says St. Paul. Obediently, in loving obedience, Jesus accepted the cross, accepted the death, most shameful death. Jesus is accepting for a higher goal. And so, when we look at Jesus, though he had all power, he was obedient to his Father. He done away with his own ego. He does away with all his ambition and will. He dies to his own self, and he embraces the will of the Father even on the cross. And Jesus says, "It is accomplished." What is accomplished? The Father's will, as God the Father had entrusted him with a mission, Jesus accomplishes that mission by dying on the cross. The devil came and tempted Jesus and asked him to turn these stones into bread. Jesus could have, but he did not. The devil told him, jump from the pinnacle of the temple and the angels will come and protect you. But Jesus did not jump from the pinnacle of the temple because he never uses his power for his own personal glorification. He never uses his authority and power in order to exalt himself. Rather, he uses all his power, all his might for the service of God the Father and service of humanity. He multiplies the bread in order to feed the hungry. He asks the lame, get up and walk. He heals the blind. He heals the hemorrhages. He raised the dead. So never he uses his power for his own glorification, rather for the service of humanity, for the service of the downtrodden and the poor. And so the right way of using our power and our authority is to humble ourselves and be at the service of our own family members, be at the service of our children, be at the service of our own life partner. Thereby we are going to secure a place with God our Father in heaven. Jesus was glorified after his death, firstborn from the dead, the resurrection. It's a hope for all of us. If we humble ourselves, if we humble to do the will of the Father in heaven, and if we humble ourselves to serve our society, the resurrection is awaiting for us. Eternal life is awaiting for us. So my dear brothers and sisters, we reach heaven by humbling ourselves, by accepting God's will, by serving our own brothers and sisters who are in need. In the psalm we read, God defends the less fortunate people. He takes care of the widows. He feeds the hungry. This was God doing throughout the history. He wants to save us. He sends prophets. He sends only his Son, who takes the form of a servant, so that we may all be saved. And so in order to secure that place, God is asking us to be humble and simple. Very often we shout. Very often we yell. And where do we express our anger most? It's at our home, because we have the freedom. We know we belong to this family, and by getting angry and shouting, nobody is going to put us away from the family. Can we do the same at our office? Can we do the same at our workplaces? It's not possible. So, my dear brothers and sisters, our family being the very close relationship, we express all our anger, all our power and authority at our home. We need to practice humility at our home. If we are humble, surely we will reduce or lower our volume. If we are humble and simple, we won't go or extend our hand and legs to beat or kick the other, be children or be the life partner. We need to practice this virtue at our home. We need to practice, because that is the most close relationship, and thereby when we humble ourselves to listen to our own life partner, when we humble ourselves to listen to their needs, thereby we are going towards God. We are marching towards God. And so, in a family, all need to grow. The husband, the wife, the children, all need to grow psychologically, all need to grow emotionally. Everyone has to grow physically. Everyone has to grow mentally. Therefore, it's a place of growing. And this growing can take place not with anger, not by yelling and shouting, rather by humbly listening to each other, caring for each other. Thereby, we are growing up. So, one is not the master of the other. Rather, one is the servant of all in the family. So, God the Father has entrusted you with a family, as a father, as a mother, as a children, to be at the service of those people who are near you and around you. So, my dear brothers and sisters, today we need to really examine and see how humble and simple we are. Let us learn from Jesus. He washed the feet of the disciples. He was the King of Kings. He is standing before Pilate with a crown of thorns, just bending his head, and he is standing, King of Kings, standing before Pilate. Who is Pilate? Pilate is nothing before Jesus, but he stands humbly, simply accepting God the Father's will. So, my dear brothers and sisters, let us humble ourselves. Let us be simple. And when we have this virtue, life becomes more meaningful. We'll have a bigger circle of friends and relations. So let us be humble and in a special way ask the Lord the grace to practice the virtue of humility in our ordinary life, in our society, in our workplaces, and especially our own home.